Hey everybody, it's a Saturday morning here in January, and today's project is going to be clearing a path for the Atlas lathe. So we're going to call this the final episode of the Atlas lathe project. I've gone as far as I'm going to go with this thing, but I've had this advertised on Craigslist, and interestingly enough, I put it up for sale right before Christmas, which is bad timing to sell anything really, unless it's going to be a Christmas gift, which this isn't going to be a Christmas gift. So, anyways, I did get a call from an individual shortly after I put it up who was very interested in the lathe, but had explained that funds were really tight for him right now, being that it was Christmas and all. So, uh, we had been in correspondence back and forth, and then yesterday, out of the blue, not one, but two other individuals reached out to me with interest in the lathe, and one of them was very interested. He actually wanted to come down last night, Friday night, but I said, let me reach out to the first buyer and just make sure that he doesn't want it. Even though I hadn't taken a deposit or anything from him, he seemed like a nice enough guy on the phone. I didn't want to kind of rake him over the coals and sell it out from underneath him. So I texted him, explained the situation. He said, some money was still tight, and he said that by all means, if I've got a buyer, go ahead and sell it. So um, he's coming down this afternoon, but I don't want the nightmare of the mess of my shop to hinder getting this thing out of here. So I'm going to clean up the top there, box up all of the accessories, get it ready to do some test cuts, and have a clear path to get it out the bulkhead. And then that'll finalize this episode or this series. So those of you who are hoping to see me continue with this, I mean, really all that was left to do on this thing was I was going to make a shield for the change gear area there because the original shield is missing. I may have, if I was going to keep the lathe, I was going to get a better chuck and maybe upgrade the motor to a little bit higher horsepower, not much. Other than that, there wasn't really much left to do on this thing. As far as what's going to go with the lathe, I've got a set of change gears. This pile of gears right here, combined with the gears that are currently on the machine, is a complete set of change gears that would have originally came with this lathe, except for one gear is missing out of this whole set. I forgot which one it was, but that other than that, it's a complete set. Got a Jacobs chuck on a Morse taper that fits the tailstock. We've got this, which is, I'm not even quite sure what this is for, but it was with the lathe when I got it, and I don't foresee a need for it myself, so I'm going to let that go with it. And then this live center was with this lathe. It's interesting. One of the individuals who contacted me, 66-year-old gentleman, he had noticed in the photograph the live center, and he asked whether or not I had a dead center for the tailstock. And he also asked whether or not I had a center for the headstock, because he wanted to be able to take the chuck off and turn between centers. So I'm going to see if I've got anything in my spare centers over there that'll fit this. The gentleman's coming down this afternoon. Actually didn't inquire about those, but if I find them, I'll include them. They're not anything I really need. They're going to be too small for the other lathe. So, yeah, because that's an awfully long. That's a live center that sticks out pretty far. Although this is a long bed on this lathe, so if you, I mean, quite frankly, if you're going to be turning between centers that length, you really need a steady rest. So unless down the road you're going to require one, you're not going to be turning that length. Here's another little drill chuck, smaller one on a same size taper. And then we've got this funky handle, which was on here, I think, just for the purpose of making it easier to turn that knob. Throw that in. Got a complete lantern tool post set up with 3 holders that fit it. The only thing I'm missing is the little half moon or little crescent shaped rocker piece. So we'll throw that in. Although I would recommend that he keeps these little homemade holders here, these open side European style. They just seem to be much better. So there's several of those that the previous owner had made for this lathe. They've got the T-nuts already on them, all ready to go. So you can set them up and put everything on center ahead of time and then just change them out as you need. So we'll include those. This one's got some kind of a boring bar. That one's a big honking one. I don't really know. He's got a piece of carbide just clamped in there. Well, throw it in. Throw that in. A little bit of high-speed steel. A couple of shims for those setting up those holders. Never did figure out what this was. Well, I'll hold on to that for now. Well, I've kind of cleared a path for this thing, but I gotta get it up on some roll-around bases to roll it over to the better lit area of the shop. Well, actually, not so much that. It's just getting it closer to the bulkhead and give us more open space to work. And this thing is deceptively heavy. For such a small lathe, it still weighs quite a bit. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to turn a taper on an Atlas lathe. So step one is you raise up the headstock end about 6 inches. I'm just kidding. I've got this on this roller because I needed to move the lathe down this end. And it's so heavy, I had to jack it up with a bottle jack and some cribbing to get it on here by myself. So until a potential buyer comes here, I think I'm going to leave it on there until I get it closer. So I'm just going to, I just chucked a piece of scrap in here, and I'm just going to do some test cuts before he gets here just to make sure everything's still working okay as far as center height on the tool and all that, rather than having to reset all that once he gets here, which is going to be time consuming. Not so great. A little better. I got a large radius high-speed steel tool bit in there. Let's see how that cuts. slowed things down, and things got a lot better. I was just asking too much for this little lathe to do. There we go. Well, everybody, it's a day later, and as you can see, the Atlas lathe is still here. The gentleman who came by and looked at it yesterday actually never even bothered to see it run. We just talked about it and had a nice discussion for about 2 hours. Come to find out, he's never owned a lathe before, never run a lathe. He's got a shop that does work on marine engines, and he had a machinist in his area that was doing some small one-off type work for him on pieces, and that guy has retired to Florida. So he was thinking that maybe if he got on the lathe and taught himself how to use it, that maybe he could start doing some of that work himself. But the more we talked about it, I think the more he realized that it can get a little bit more involved than I think he wants to really have to deal with. And we talked about the possibility of him actually sending me some stuff and having me do the work for him. So that might work out. Unfortunately, it does lead to the problem of not having a sale on the lathe, but where one door closes, another often opens. I got another, was contacted today by another individual who's interested in the lathe, so they might be coming down one night this week to check it out. And I do still have one of the original people who contacted me still. He's got a lot of snow plowing to do because we just got some major storms here in the Northeast. But when the weather clears out, he talked about wanting to come down and take a look at it. He is a 66-year-old gentleman who told me that he had a lathe a while back, and then he, for whatever reason, that lathe entered his life and then left his life, and he's looking to get another one. So he's got a better idea of what's involved in running one. The question is he going to be satisfied with this old dog? But I did play around with some test cuts and feeds and speeds, and I reset that high-speed steel tool, and I am getting some decent cuts now. So I'm going to demonstrate that now. This is what it looked like after I just finished my last test cut, and you can see the finish is far better than what it was the other day. So what this is about to be is a 20,000th depth cut. So it actually is acting like it's cutting better when I take a heavier cut. So let's see. The test cut that I took off camera seemed even better. Maybe I was I was getting a nice curl. Let's see on the chip. So let's see, that was 20 thousandths. Let's go 25. There we go. So it's almost like the tool bit is rubbing on those lighter cuts, and that when I really increase the depth of cut, that the tool bit starts to cut. All right, let's try this. This is 25 thousandths. I know you don't, ideally you don't want these kind of chips that are 2 or 3 feet long, but the main thing I'm just pleased to see is that it's hogging off some material now. I want to face off that little piece that's sticking out over there. So if I turn this, and the lighting here is horrible. I wonder why I'm not cutting anything there. Still not have that tool height correct because tool bit's not facing that little tip off. So last night I was scoping out eBay just out of curiosity. First I was looking just out of curiosity what it was going to cost to buy a good used or new replacement chuck for this thing. And then I happened to poke around and see what was the current market for parts from this lathe, and I came to the realization that although it would take me a little longer, I could actually probably get the money that I'm asking for this lathe by parting it out. The main thing is things like the change gears. The change gears average around 15 bucks a gear. So get 10. Let's say I probably get 10 change gears. It's 150 bucks right there. Some of the parts would take a while to sell though. So the forward and reverse gears and the direction change gearbox over here, those are a hot commodity apparently. I was taking a lighter cut, just feeding by hand. I was curious. This thing.